English Teacher, Part 135. Appropriate use of lecture. To use lecture appropriately, you must be sensitive to students' needs and observe their responses carefully. Take your students' development levels and innate learning style preferences, and these preferences into the account. When you take them into an account, and certainly you get the better vision. And of course, when you take your students' developmental level and innate learning style preferences into an account, and that's what we can see as a supplement lecture with the other instructional strategies. If you observe your students losing interest, follow up your lecture by checking carefully to ensure that your students understand fully the information you have given them, and by taking time for your class discussion that allows for individual differences and provides time for both you and your students to ask questions. Provide opportunities for students to apply newly acquired knowledge, preferably by initiating some activity that involves experiential or hands-on learning. Lecture can be used teaching strategies when the subject matter is factual and provides little opportunity for forming opinion or solving problems. You need to rouse your students' attention to provide background information before using another method of instruction. You are instructing your students in practicing a learning technique. Your class is large and teaching time is limited. Critical information must be provided succinctly. Lecture is not recommended teaching strategy when the content is complex, abstract, or detailed. High rates of learning and long-term retentions are instructional goals. The content deals with the feeling and the attitudes or the communication, interpersonal or group skills. Learners must integrate content with previous learning or life experience, and experiential approach to the learning may be more appropriate, or that the thinking skills in the process and the process's outcomes are more important than product informational outcomes. Teaching note-taking. Before you require your students to take notes during a lecture session, be sure to teach or discuss the process in class and to provide chalkboard examples and practice. Remember too that if students are to take notes effectively, instructors must pace their rate of delivery and pause frequently. If your students are inexperienced in taking notes, monitor their early attempts and give them plenty of time, feedback, and encouragement. While our table also provides tips for fostering effective notes taking. There is a guide for fostering effective notes taking. Number 1, provide an overview or outline of what you intend to present. Next, present information logically and sequentially. Teach your students to be aware of and listen for structures that will help them to organize their notes. Next, provide verbal and non-verbal clues, including the appropriate pauses and tonal or volume variations to help your students identify key points and sub-points. Next, teach your students to paraphrase ideas in order to define concepts for themselves. Next, encourage your students to ask questions. Next, avoid dictating notes unless you must confirm important features such as summaries or definitions. Next, monitor students' notes to check that they are complete and accurate, to provide time for students to check their notes against the text or other reference materials. Next, provide or elicit summaries at appropriate points. Last but not the least, have your students practice making point form notes that they can restructure or flesh out later by using reference materials.